YouTube, I am the bearded brother, and today we're taking a look at and comparing three of the market's most popular and prolific high lumen weapon mounted lights: the Surefire X300, the Olight Baldr Pro, and the Streamlight TLR1-HL. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd ask that you pause the video now, scroll down, take a look for that subscribe button, and once you found it, go ahead and give that a click for me. I do appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, so like I said in the introduction, we've got three lights on the table. We're going to run through these as quickly as possible and touch on some of the good and the bad of each. Alright, and so what we're not going to do is jump into the specs, the numbers if you will. Right, I'll put those on the screen where possible and where applicable, and you can pause that and read that for yourself if that's what you're into. All right, now what we will do is go through a number of different categories that I've lined up for the video, and of course we'll kind of bring it home with value, bang for your buck if you will. Okay, and so for each of these categories I'm going to rank these, give them a score from 1 to 5, and we'll keep a running total up top as we go through the list. All right, and so up first, naturally these are WMLs. We are going to be starting with light output, lumens, candela. Again, not getting into the numbers, but what I'm going to do instead, as I talk through these, I'm going to share on the screen some of the video that I captured, went out to different lighting areas, lighting situations, and tested each of these lights individually and captured some footage. All right, and so first things first, the Baldr Pro, of course, right, the Valkyrie, again, whatever you want to call this one, right? We're familiar with this light by and large in the community. You've at least heard about it, okay? And so the Baldr, I found, honestly, for what you pay, for what you're getting, quite good, right? It has a very defined hotspot. In fact, I would say the most defined hotspot out of any of the lights here on the table. The throw, comparable, of course, to everything here on the table as well. And one other thing that I'll point out, right, a pro to this light is the ability to transition between low and high light output, okay? And so that's something that the other lights don't necessarily bring to the table. All right, we're not going to include the laser in our analysis today. I will also say, as far as the numbers go, the Baldr Pro has some of the highest candela out of what's on the table here, okay? And so that did play a role in some of the footage that you'll see me roll in. The light I found punched through pretty well, didn't create the most reflection off of light colored surfaces, and allowed, right, visibility for the most part through and through. I think that the hot spot, while defined, wasn't extremely hot, if you will, right? And it certainly wasn't the worst out of the group. So far, I mean, the Olight has held up. The light output is pretty impressive, considering especially the price, which we'll get to here in a bit. Now, moving on to the right, we're talking Surefire now. Now, this is my EDC light, and so I'll preface this by saying I want it to do well. And I'll follow that by saying I was a bit disappointed with the light output from the Surefire. Of course, it's the most expensive light here on the table. Its light output, I will say, is best for a handgun. Okay, and of course, for the most part, that it will be the use for these lights. Of course, there will be the occasional user that'll put these on a long arm of some kind. Of course, for me, I do use them on a sidearm. All right, so that for me makes perfect sense. The reason I say that this light is most suited for a sidearm of some kind is because, one, it's got the warmest temperature out of everything here on the table, at least in my experience. Okay, and it's got some of the best flood out of anything here on the table. All right, it's not so punchy at distance, but it's got a very it's got a pretty defined, I'll say, hot spot at CQB distances, pistol ranges, if you will. And it's only once you stretch the distance out kind of beyond the realistic handgun range, I would say, not unrealistic, but day-to-day unrealistic range, is only at that point will you kind of notice the difference between this and some of the others, right? And so the candela output on the X300U lower than what else we have here on the table. The lumen output, not bad, but of course, you do kind of notice the lack of that candela. The flood is pretty heavy, but it's not so punchy at distance. So if you're gonna keep one of these for handgun sidearm use, if you will, you can, I wouldn't count this one out just yet. All right, and then lastly, wrapping it up with the TLR1-HL, okay? So this one, I was pretty surprised. I've said it in a previous video. I am not the biggest fan of Streamlights. I think that they look kind of basic. And I mean, frankly, even Olight does a bit more with their design, but we'll get to that in a bit. I was impressed with the light output from this light. It's probably got the brightest hotspot out of everything here on the table. It's probably got some of the furthest throw out of everything here on the table. Frankly, it's a nice balance, and I think that this one, if any one of these lights is going to be purchased with the intention of being placed on a long arm of sorts, I would go with this one. It's got, again, some of the highest candela, at least from my experience, maybe not on paper, but in my experience, I found that this one seemed to be the brightest, not only up close, but also at distance, right? So not the most flood from this light, but certainly I would say a bit more than what the Olight provides, but not quite as floody, if you will, as the X300U. Okay, so that's light output, right? These are lights at the end of the day, so I figured I would start with that. All right, and so that being said, let's give each of these a score for the category of light output. All right, I'm gonna keep it real here. I'm gonna give the Surefire a 3. I'm gonna give this a 5, and I'm gonna give the Baldr a 4. All right, so 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so again, moving on from light output to how we operate those lights, the tail switch. Okay, so again, we'll start with the Olight once again. I do like this tail switch. It is tactile. We'll hear that here together. Nice and clicky. It can, of course, be actuated from the sides, as I'm doing there. And you can also press it from the back and get that to actuate just the same. Of course, with the Olight, you do also have the ability to double click that tail switch and adjust that light output, as I mentioned before. And of course, if you are able to double click both of these here at the same time, you can go straight into strobe mode. Okay, so straightforward enough. We won't spend too much time talking about tail switches. This one's straightforward. It's tactile, works from the side and from the back. All right, moving on to the X300U. This tail switch, kind of similar in its operation. It will work from the back. I can actuate that just with a press on either side. And that's gonna give me my momentary if I give that a long hold. And of course, for the constant on, I would have the option or the requirement, frankly, to switch this in either direction. It's a mechanical tail switch. And once it's locked into that position, of course, it's making contact and it's switching that light on. Okay, so a little bit different. Of course, with the Olight, we've got a simple one press for constant on and a press and hold for momentary. Okay, and then wrapping it up again with the Streamlight TLR1-HL. Okay, this tail switch, I will say right off the bat, my least favorite. It does not have any ability to actuate from the front or from the back, I will say, or from the sides. It's merely an up and down operation. So if I flick this down and hold it down, that's momentary. And of course, as I flip that down, the right side goes up, so I could always flip that up for momentary as well. And if I flip this down, or this side up, of course, it's going to actuate or jump into the constant on mode. Now, similar to the Olight, this does have a strobe functionality. If I double tap in the momentary position and hold, I'll get that strobe output. Okay, but again, for me, I do not like this tail switch. The inability to access kind of with that straight push on the back or even from the sides. Not a fan of that. Okay, so for tail switch, I'm going to give the Surefire a 5. We're going to give the Olight a 4. And we're going to give the Streamlight a 3. All right, moving on to our next category, durability. All right, and so I'm a civilian. I imagine you're likely a civilian if you're watching this video. We also, to that point, likely are not going to be destroying and beating the hell out of our lights, right? We're not living daily life in the sands of Afghanistan. And therefore, right, much of how I score this durability category, if you will, is going to be based on the build quality, feel in hand, as well as the track record for reliability, be that from duty use, civilian use in the industry, or contract military use, okay? And so, first things first, Olight gonna score the lowest on this list. As we know, these lights are produced in China, and nothing against that. A lot of good stuff comes from China. However, I will say it does not feel the best in hand. It's certainly got the lowest reputation or track record for reliability, right? These lights aren't I wouldn't say that they've been around for as long as the other two. It's probably got the worst QD or attachment mechanism of anything here on the table. And frankly, my experience with Olight has been hit or miss. I've had some handheld lights from them that went out on me a lot of the times, not even actively being used. So let that say what it will. Moving on to Surefire. This is a brand, a light manufacturer that has a stellar reputation for reliability and usage within both the law enforcement duty community as well as military grade use, right? And so Surefire, they're great at making a light that you're gonna have a hard time breaking. And I can say the same for this. I mean, this one probably feels the best in hand. The way it's constructed, to me, looks the best. Of course, it's the longest out front. But frankly, right, you know, you get what you pay for, and the Surefire is going to last you well. You'll be hard pressed again to break one of those. Now, once again, wrapping up with the Streamlight, the new contender to the table, if you will. This light, pretty dang good. I've seen this light mounted on a number of duty weapons, not my own, of course, but law enforcement does seem to have taken a liking to this particular WML, and being as those guys train where I train a lot of the times, I've seen them in use, and holding it in hand here, it does feel pretty sturdy. In fact, it feels heavier than the Surefire at times, but I think it's just due to the way that the batteries are distributed throughout the casing. Neither here nor there. Very good light there as well, and I would say a pretty good reputation for reliability and durability as well. And so I'm going to give the Streamlight a 4, the Surefire a 5, and we'll give the Olight a 3. All right, and I could go lower than that, but I will not. All right, so let's move on to some of the more important categories, if you will. Right, we're talking price, aesthetics, value. Okay, so price, right off the bat, you're going to pay the most for the Surefire. Okay, this thing comes in at close to $300 MSRP. You're going to pay a little bit less for the Streamlight. I would say that this is the kind of good middle ground option as far as pricing. And then lastly, right, you're going to probably pay the least for this Olight, depending on the model, of course, right, laser or no laser. You'll probably pay the least for the Olight. Of course, if you catch them during the sale, you can probably pay even less than that. All right, so price, let that say what it will. We'll put those up on the screen as well. Now, look, let's get into look, right? Let's get into aesthetics. That's going to be largely subjective, but I'm going to keep this one short. We're going to give this a 5 for looks. We'll give this a 4, and we'll give this a 3 for looks, right? And so most of these scores we're going to keep 3 to 5, but certainly this one looks the worst to me, right? The Streamlight just doesn't have much going for it as far as aesthetics, but that being said, the performance speaks for itself, okay? And then wrapping up lastly with value, right? Which one should you get if you can only get one, all things considered? I'm going to come right out the bat and tell you guys the value option here on this table is the Streamlight. These things are extremely well priced, and this HL version, at least I can say, with its 1,000 lumens, it's up there, right? As far as the lights here on the table, this one is the most well-rounded as far as durability, light output, reputation for that reliability, if you will. The only downside in my mind to this TLR1 is that tail switch, and of course that's a training, practice, get used to it type of thing. But again, let that say what it will. The least value oriented on this list, of course, going to be the Surefire. Now, why is that? Of course, it comes in at close to $300. But if you're going to be tough on your light, if you're a discerning customer in the sense that you just want something that works every single time, you don't want to have to think about it, you don't personally care if it costs a little bit more than the others, you want something that's durable, that has that reputation, then frankly, maybe value isn't the category that you care about, right? If you're looking at the Surefire, after all I've said, then by all means go for it, right? I personally run this light. I love it. It's still my favorite out of what's here on the table. But again, we'll let the score be the score, and I'll let you all make the decision. And then lastly, right, we'll kind of wrap it up with the Olight. Good value as far as price goes. Reliability, not so much. I'm not sure that I could particularly count on an Olight in an emergency situation. And so for that reason, I'm kind of rocking these as hobby grade stuff, right? Nothing significant, nothing that I'm gonna bet my life upon, all right? And that's not to say that you can't. Like I said, these WMLs, at least I've had a better experience with the WMLs over the hand lights. Neither here nor there. I'm going to break it down as a 5. I'm going to give this a 4 only because, right, the price is high, but you're getting a lot of reliability. And I'm going to give this a 3, right? The price, you know what? We'll bump the Olight to a 4. The price is good. I'll say as far as value, it's on par with the Streamlight. But when it comes down to performance and all things considered, I think the Streamlight takes the cake if you can only have one, and price is a factor, okay? Also, that being said, if we're going to consider the fact that maybe you might put one of these on a long gun of sorts, the TLR1 again bridges that gap the best. I found that it had the best throw and the best hot spot at distance. Now, the Olight's pretty good with its hot spot, I've got to be honest, it is, but the runtime, the step down, the reliability, the Chinesium, there's a lot to say about that. I'm open to having my mind changed, so Olight, if you're watching, send me something. But for me, and this again is the one that I run, the Surefire X300U, it's still the choice that I'll go with. I'd still recommend it to anybody, but I will say that after this evaluation, the Streamlight has earned a recommendation as well. With that being said, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. And a bit, brother.